To get started, just waiting for the technology. Okay. All right, welcome everyone to the launch of Julian's debut with author Brian Alessandro. Realize my head is cut off. Someday we'll have a professional video setup, but for now the laptop does the trick. So my name is Greg Newton. I'm the co-founder, along with my beloved partner Donnie Jokum, of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, which is the space you are in right now. Thank you. And the Bureau is a project that we started back in 2012, and we have been here at the LGBT Community Center since 2014. So the project is a queer independent bookstore, all volunteer, and we have regular hours Wednesdays through Sundays from 1 to 7 p.m. And then we often stay open later when we have events such as this. So as an all-volunteer independent queer bookstore, we are dependent on sales and donations to keep this machine going. Especially if you don't plan on buying a book, we ask you to make a contribution if you're able to. If you're able to do both, that's even better. But we have plenty of books at the back, and Brian will be signing afterwards. We also have David Santos Donaldson's Greenland here as well. So those books are available. I'm going to pass around this bag, which has some cash in it if you need small bills. There's also a QR code for our Venmo account, which is at BGSQD for those of you watching online. So I'll pass that around. And if you're not already on our email list and you would like to be, you can sign up for that at bgsqd.com. And you'll get an email every other Monday about our many upcoming events. With that, I would like to read a land acknowledgement, and then I will introduce our two readers, or our one reader and speaker. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community Houses Mannahatta Fund. The Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native people who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more at mannahattafund.org. So, Julian's debut is Brian Alessandro's 5th overall book and 3rd novel. He has also written the novels The Unmentionable Man and Performer Non Grata, and co-adapted Edmund White's A Boy's Own Story in a graphic novel with Michael Carroll and Igor Karash, and co-edited the anthology Fever Spores, The Queer Reclamation of William S. Burroughs with Tom Cardamom. Brian freelances for Newsday, Interview, The Gay and Lesbian Review, Wes Anderson's Gallery, Kirkus, and the Florida Review. David Santos Donaldson, who will be joining Brian in conversation in a moment, is the author of the 2022 award-winning novel Greenland. He has also written plays commissioned by the Public Theater. So please give them both a very warm welcome.
So thank you all for coming, and thank you everybody who's watching from home. Those of you who are in New York who are too lazy to come out in the moment. As soon as they see that it's live stream optional, they're like, oh, I'll just stay home and watch from there. It's not the same, you have to come out, you have to be here in the space with me. So thank you all for braving the New York subway system and the moderately chilly weather and coming out today. No kidding. Don't stop watching, please. I was kidding. Thank you for watching.
That's your first book, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to say that Julian's debut is dedicated to 5 people, 3 of whom are no longer with us. Annette Elagia, Anthony Tony Vargas Jr., and Leanne Pissarro. I also dedicate it to 2 people who are still with us, Edmund White and Michael Carroll. To say the secret of another is a betrayal. To say yours is a stupidity. Voltaire. If murder were legal, my family would have killed me. When my essay about them was published in the New Yorker, the Sorrentos, the Barthas, the Burns, and the Clints called incessantly, left hostile voicemails, and sent threatening texts with too many exclamation points and exploding head emojis, the one with the censored expletives over the mouths. Those who lived nearby even showed up to complain about what I'd included and omitted. Fortunately, my pre-war 1 bedroom was on the 6th floor of a Jackson Heights walk-up and required an intercom buzz-in, which I ignored. Even my ex, Raul, who was not at all implicated in the piece, fired off furious, damning texts. It was his nature to excoriate. Everyone challenged my account of events, expressed their displeasure with my admission, suggesting a betrayal of trust. Their suspicions were absurd, and the accusations were offensive. I've always prided myself on my integrity, even if I like a good fable well told. Life is often tedious or boring or too sad to bear, but I did not make things up whole cloth. I certainly did not lie in the article. The New Yorker has fact checkers anyway and a huge legal department, so they wouldn't publish anything that might come back to bite them on the ass. Maybe I tend to exaggerate a bit or to condense characters and events when writing, but even leading memoirists find that acceptable when writing an autobiography for the sake of readability. My Aunt Mary, my mother's weird, bookish sister, according to my father, was generous with her guidance. But when I was in high school and thought I would become a writer, she offered an abundant amount of praise, a pursuit up until this essay she thought was reasonable. She would take time out of her busy academic career to read my short stories about sex robots, anarchistic mind readers, and pornographer clones. She even gave me notes on some of them. Her feedback was always encouraging, even when the stories lacked plausibility. And she especially complimented my easy grace with verisimilitude. To her, I could make even the most unbelievable events seem believable. Or maybe she was just being encouraging because she saw my passion and didn't want to nip it in the bud. My Mighty Meekness, the problematic article, really a mini memoir, raised the ire of not only my parents, but also my sister, my brother, my sister-in-law, brother-in-law, paternal grandfather, 2 nephews, my Aunt Mary, her husband, my Uncle Monroe, and their son Pegasus. I was surprised to learn that not everyone sought fame or to be written about. I thought they'd appreciate what I'd done. I thought they would have been flattered to be included. My mother even rushed out to buy a copy of the issue the day it arrived at the Barnes & Noble in the mall near her house, maybe the only time she's ever actually bought a copy of the New Yorker. She called multiple times as she read it. Couldn't even wait till she got to the end. When I tuned out her calls and didn't listen to her voicemail messages, she began texting, something she abhorred. Her messages reiterated the same request. Mom, Julian, please call me. I hate texting. I'm proud of you for getting yourself up there, but we need to talk about what you've done. I can understand everyone's reluctance to share the family saga with readers. After all, our origin story was one of shame, humiliation, poverty, loss, and disgrace. Mom. Julian, call me right now. Stop making me text. During the week of publication, my father buzzed my intercom every other day as the drive from Bergen County wasn't too bad after rush hour. You did what you had to do to get up there, right? The rest of us sap speed down. Look, I know you're home, you fucking ingrate. Open the goddamn door and let me up. I just want to talk. By the second week, it was once every 3 days, and then once a week, and then not at all. No one had my stamina. I could outlast them all. The janitor in my building was a sweet middle-aged man from Hermosillo named Arturo, and I would regale him with recollections of my Peace Corps work in Mexico City. I recounted the time I saved 3 children from a burning orphanage, rushing in through a back door to pull them away from a roof that I knew would collapse within minutes. Then there was the encounter with a defective mule from the Sinaloa cartel who had stolen a bazooka. He and I would drive up to the Sonoran Desert to fire it off in the ink-black sky in the middle of the night, prompting tarantulas and Gila monsters and javelinas to scamper out of sight. Another episode centered on my Olympian swim from Mazatlan to Cabo San Lucas, outwitting sharks, heat stroke, and riptides. Maybe because my Spanish was as porous as English, he seemed to believe me. Why would I make any of this up? I mean, of course I did. And I've only ever been to Mexico once, and that was when I was 15 and went with a friend and his parents for a week to Puerto Vallarta. Maybe he knew I'd lied and was just being polite, humoring my demented tall tales. I'm not sure why I was compelled to lie to Arturo. I guess I wanted to see how convincingly I could tell incredible stories. That said, my essay in the New Yorker is completely true. In fact, I've been told that my article offered a rare insight into self-sacrifice from someone within the social service industry. Some readers and my agent, the influential Caroline Herzer, said that I had offered a rarefied look inside a social condition and psychological predisposition not often accurately explored. Some would argue it was poverty porn or fetishistic in its compromising minutiae about my family. But the nature of the piece was always about exploitation itself, mine, that is. How my family had used me, leaned on me too heavily, and how their needs throughout my childhood and young adulthood led me to social work, where I could continue to go without, in this case, inadequate salary, and a desire to one day write fiction, in lieu of helping others. Caroline had decided to represent me based solely on the popularity of the essay, but with the understandable promise that I would develop it into a book, something we'd both be able to monetize, which meant that I need to write more about these people who were still angry with me. Mere paragraphs would swell to become entire chapters. One or two personal admissions would become dozens. Glossed over incidents would demand microscopic scrutiny. If the article was a tremor, a book would be a major seismic event. My brother James, his wife Luz, and their son Vaughn took turns texting and calling me for the first few days after the article was published. Their voicemail messages range from the moderately patient to the downright apoplectic. James, what were you thinking, bro? I knew you wanted to get yourself up there, but like this? Give me a call. We need to talk about this garbage. Luz, I'm a little embarrassed for you, Julian, if this is what you think you need to do to succeed as a writer. Vaughn, Uncle Julian, I thought we were cool, man. James, you're a fucking boneheaded pussy, Julian. You don't get to just write whatever fucking crazy shit pops into your sick head. Luz, you're lucky we don't sue your ass, Julian, you hateful, stupid, spiteful hack. Vaughn, you're a traitor to your family and the gay community, and I hope this eats you up, you miserable wannabe. Nice fan. My sister, Sophia, she and James were full siblings, unlike me, and were almost the same age. Her husband, Doug, and their son, Arnold, surprised me by being, at first, the most congenial and understanding of the lot, though Arnold did eventually spook me with his threats. They called, and I didn't answer, so they left voicemail messages and sent texts, of course. Sophia, I guess you had your reasons to do what you did to get up there, but you have to live with it now, Julian. Douglas, it was a scumbag thing to do to pulverize us like that, but I get it. You're playing dirty like we all play dirty. Just don't act like you're above any of it anymore. You had to get yourself up there as much as any other low-life gold digger I've ever known. Arnold, Uncle Julian, I always respected you, and it's cool that you got yourself up there, and even though you're gay, I never let any of my friends talk shit about you, or, the other homos. But now I don't know no more. I may go fuck up a faggot just to get back at you. They all use the same expression, up there, as though up there was this mythic place of better people with better lives, and if I ascended, I'd be better too, and entitled to do what I pleased with impunity, which maybe in their minds I already did. The most interesting plot centered on Aunt Mary, Uncle Monroe, and Pegasus. Their stories, only a few pages in My Mighty Meekness, had caught the attention of the Darlington brothers. They optioned the rights to the entire piece, but they were only interested in adapting the storylines about Mary, Monroe, Pegasus into a Max series. All other family members would be excised, except for a cameo by my mother. Mary was a Columbia University anthropologist who had inadvertently caused the Civil War in northeastern India due to her clumsy ethnographic methodologies. Her engineer husband, Monroe, built bombs for Raytheon in their New Jersey plant. Their radical poet's son, Pegasus, protested both of their immoral behaviors by inviting homeless people to live with them, thereby testing their tolerances or mercies. The Darlington brothers renamed the story The Touring Barbarism. Their title was poetic and apt. They too texted, Mary, Julian, I always considered you the bright star in the family, a true thinker who would pull himself out of that peasant mentality, but with this essay, maybe I just don't think I was right about you. Please do not go forward with the book. Monroe, the temerity to accuse me of building bombs, that you would, first of all, reveal that information is legally suspect. And second, I am not a killer, you little twerp. Pegasus, rock on, cousin, burn it all down. Sometimes I would strike up conversations with the teenagers playing basketball in the schoolyard down the block from my apartment. It was the location of the horrible murder of Julio Rivera, a gay man in 1990. 3 white skinheads wanted to reclaim their turf from the gays and the homeless and targeted him with a hammer and a knife. All the kids I spoke with knew of Julio, as his death had so disturbed the neighborhood that residents made sure to turn Jackson Heights into a haven for the LGBTQ community. I had told these boys that I was a police officer at the local precinct, the 115th, and was undercover, looking for members of the Latin Kings and MS-13, wanted for human trafficking and murder. I had even had phony cards printed with a bogus name, Detective Jason Johnson, with a fake number. They looked real enough to convince the kids. I have no idea if they ever called the number on the card, but whenever I would see them on the way to the train or returning from food shopping or the gym, they would nod knowingly as though they thought of themselves as informants helping with an important operation. By the time my article was released, all my grandparents had been dead, except for Angelo, my father's father. He was an ornery 85, still capable of carrying his own groceries and vacuuming his own apartment, cooking his own meals, and bedding myriad mistresses. Since he never divorced my grandmother, any lover felt like an infidelity in his undersized Bay Ridge studio. I received a handwritten letter from Grandpa. It was thoughtful and poignant, if not wounding. Julian, you write well. Maybe you could have been Steinbeck or Mickey Spillane, but you decided to go and do a hit job on your family instead. And so now you don't deserve to have the soul to write about the everyman anymore, the poor man, the struggle. You have lost that right. The right to tell the world about desperation. You will not be a crime writer either because your tall tales are unbelievable. They will all see right through you. Life is short. It goes fast. Don't hurt the wrong people. Love, Grandpa A. In addition to getting a major literary agent to represent me and celebrated filmmakers to hire me for a screenwriting gig, the article also brought the author, Edward Gray, and his husband, Kevin Tracy, into my life. Edward was well into his 80s and regarded as the godfather of queer literature, and his husband, Kevin, a full 30 years younger than him, was also a writer, but I'd given it up to, as he put it, play dutiful housewife. Kevin had read my article in the New Yorker when it was first published over a year ago, and then found me on Facebook a few days later. He sent a message, and we chatted for a week or two before he invited me over for one of their weekly dinners that were always well attended by New York luminaries and other smaller writers or composers or socialites or scientists, sometimes even actors, and we have remained great friends ever since. Though I doubted my place at their table, the two things that made me feel instantly safe with Edward and Kevin were their lack of pretense and their kindness. They ordered pizza or Chinese food during these parties with important people, probably accustomed to caviar, white truffles, and duck confit. And they seemed genuinely interested in me and my work and never made me feel inadequate, even when I didn't get an opera reference or a French phrase. I think everyone liked the way Ed and Kevin made them feel at home and appreciated, which is why they kept coming, a different set of guests every week on an ever-rotating carousel of outsized personalities. My family, on the other hand, not nearly as cultured, successful, or famous, almost always made me feel insecure with their apathy or criticisms. With them, I'd assumed the roles of accommodator and doormat. They were unfortunate in their way, not bad, not intentionally bad. They were misguided, ignorant, maybe willfully, uneducated, uncultured, uncouth, sure, but not bad. Because of the limitations, something of a handicap in managing life, I always felt as if I were responsible for them. They hated me for writing this in the essay, but they're inherently incapable people and woefully self-destructive. For most of my teenage years, when other boys were having sex or getting into mischief, I was busy catering to them, to the point of sickness and sacrifice, no less. I never had the chance to be a dumb kid, to create a life for myself. I became a hermit when they finally broke up and moved away. Even though I wrote and submitted novels that were rejected by publishers, I took a job in social services because I felt the need to continue helping people. Because of my family's special needs, I also became socially awkward. Even through college, at Columbia, miraculously, I availed myself to my family, whatever they needed, whenever they needed it. Mom. Well, now you're just being a real dick, Julian. Pick up the fucking phone and call me. To be fair, my family were also loyal and looked out for each other. They provided for their children and spouses, or at least tried. They cared about each other's well-being. I hope I captured those elements too, even if they thought my account of their lives was full of lies and would doom them all. I'm gonna take a sip of water and then read another section, if that's okay. So this is an excerpt from the New Yorker article in which he writes about his sister-in-law. My brother James dated models, including a Playboy cover girl who was also an NYPD officer, which created a scandal the entire country heard about. Aspiring actresses and strippers almost exclusively, and finally married one. Luz Osorio was from Bogota, Colombia. She was effortlessly charming and seduced our entire family when dating James, though became possessive and paranoid after marrying him, a decision that was occasioned by my brother's lack of caution. He'd gotten her pregnant when she was only 20, the median age of conception for the women in my family, and soon after their Justice of the Peace ceremony, Vaughn was born. Luz would deny it if anyone asked, but she'd confided to me that she'd been raised by Marxist parents in a dogmatic commune, really a cult. When she and my brother first dated, we'd do everything together, horseback riding weekly, plays in museums and drinks and dinners, sharing dishes. Movie night was twice a week. She preferred love stories and I tended toward horror. We discussed art and books. Sometimes we went to cocktail parties before film premieres. She was smart and fun and cool, but when Vaughn was born, she changed. Almost something hormonal kicked in, or maybe she'd been playing us all along to snare my brother. He lacked backbone and was easily swayed, led away from us almost too readily, as if he'd waited his entire life for a beautiful woman to waltz in and steer him from our interdependent dysfunction. It was a shame that she fell out so badly with us, as we bonded almost immediately. I finally had someone in my family with whom I could discuss books and film and art and culture. Luz and I were much closer in age than she and James. Luz also tricked my mother into believing that she regarded her as a second mom. And my mom foolishly, cruelly took to Luz as a second daughter, one she favored over her own. Sophia added that slight to the already towering mountain of lifelong resentments from my mother. When I told Luz that I wanted to be a writer, she'd encourage me to leave college, steer clear of conventional full-time jobs, and to wait tables or bartend to free my time and my mind for writing and networking. She said I should move to LA and try to get work on a TV show because that would help me get an agent. She'd known people in TV and film, and she was a model for a short time and even acted briefly. She befriended the legendary studio executive Robert Evans, the titan who'd been responsible for the Godfather films and Chinatown and Rosemary's Baby. He even called to her apartment once when I was over. She'd been in the shower and I answered. When he said who he was, I thought it was a prank, but it hadn't been. He was interested in Luz for more than her limited acting ability. If she wanted to have a career as an actress, he'd make it happen, but at a cost. Clearly, her principles had been greater than the offer. She'd not been able to refuse, yet she refused, and so became a nurse. 10 years later, I would meet the son, a budding producer himself, the Paramount executive vice president, who'd actually had to fire Evans in the 1990s for his rampant drug addiction. That was true. By then, I'd all but given up my passing dream of writing and earned an MSW, got licensed, and became a social worker. When she and my brother had begun dating, Luz had rear-ended a fire truck at 60 miles per hour, killing a firefighter riding on the back. She had been drunk. She survived the accident, though required reconstructive surgeries to repair the scars the windshield caused when it exploded into her face. My brother used his connections as a police officer to have her sentence reduced from 10 consecutive years in prison to imprisonment on weekends for 5 years, 10 years of community service, a 30-day stay in rehab, and an annually documented lifetime in AA. They also paid out over $1 million to the firefighter's family in a civil suit, something that cost both her and my brother years of savings, their condominium, and several more years of garnished wages. While it hurt them both financially, it destroyed a large part of Luz. After finding one of a litany of phone numbers of a woman in my brother's pants pocket, Luz subjected me to a tirade about what a creep he was, what a weakling, what an insecure mama's boy, and how he wasn't even the most handsome man she had ever dated, and how he was selfish in bed, and how he had been abusive and cruel and immature and lazy and dumb and ignorant about world affairs, and uncultured and uncouth and an embarrassment to bring to her parties, her society parties and art galleries and upscale restaurants. I allowed her to vent, even though she'd been saying the nastiest things about my brother, who I still had looked up to as a kind of role model. But I never stopped her, I never challenged her, I never defended him, and I regretted it for years. He may have been some of those things, maybe even all of those things, but he was also my brother, my heroic brother, with all his warts and flaws and shortcomings and immoralities. And I should have said something. After the first tome of invectives, Luz felt emboldened to badmouth him intermittently to me. It taught me the value of keeping my mouth shut and permitting free rein to people during diatribes, to be there for others as a sounding board, to provide them ample rope with which to hang themselves, to collect and accumulate self-damning dirt on the mindless talkers. I just want to read one more section, chapter 32. This is a short one. The legendary editor and former science fiction writer Tonya Magnuson at Stablehome bought my manuscript only 2 weeks after Caroline sent it to her. She'd been a fan of the New Yorker article, and Caroline had been discussing the touring barbarism with her throughout the past year. So once the book was ready, all that was left was the formality of reading it, which she did with great interest, speed, and kindness. Tonya was a very perceptive reader and even a sharper editor. She sent me global edits first, those notes that requested revisions to structure, pacing, language, and a request for additional information. And then she conducted a meticulous copy edit, correcting my spelling, challenging my facts, and improving my grammar. She fast-tracked the book and had it on the market within 8 months. I guess everyone thought they could make some money from it, given the forthcoming cable series, though the air date of the touring barbarism was still a full year out. I had not heard from Raoul in all that time, and the figures he toppled at RFN had lost their jobs and likely careers. They'd been laying low at the very least, and they probably planned with a crisis strategist a course of action for re-emerging in time. I imagine Raoul teaching homeless kids in Thailand how to fight, or maybe lounging on the beaches of Rio. He might have even been climbing Mount Everest or Mount Kilimanjaro for all I knew. He could be anywhere on the planet. He could have been dead. I'd have no way of knowing, and I was pretty sure I'd never see him again, so in a sense, he kind of was dead, and I duly mourned. In the 2 weeks leading up to publication, my memoir got more press than I'd anticipated. This was due in no small part to Caroline and Tanya's collective efforts to push Stablehome's PR department to capitalize on the anticipation for the touring barbarism and the lingering buzz surrounding the New Yorker article. The New York Times said of my book, Julian Sorrento has bore his soul and his spleen, and in the process of producing an enduring work of literature, sacrificed his entire family. Kin goes extinct, but art remains for eons. The LA Times called my book exploitative, stating that I had compromised my family for a little notoriety and money, and that my mediocre literary endeavor was an immoral act. On Sirius XM's Michelangelo Signorelli show, the titular host asked me how I felt about being portrayed in the media as less of a victim of my family's mistreatment and more of a perpetrator of their privacies and characters. I never intended for the book to make me out to be some kind of victim, I said into the giant silver microphone in his cramped Midtown studio. I only sought to tell the truth about a modern American family pressured by the demands of a capitalist society. He cocked his head and grinned knowingly. The struggle of the working class, like Doug Stewart or Charles Bukowski, if you like. On the Today Show, Al Roker asked me if I had any regrets about sharing so many intimate details about my family with the world. The studio lights were bright and hot, and I recall feeling distracted and even oppressed by them. No, well, not really, because it's all true. Even so, just because something is true doesn't mean it should be served up for public consumption, right? I blinked at him and was spellbound again by the lights. The cameras also began to command my attention. I guess that is the risk for people in a family with a writer. People's profile on me made me out to be a victim. Sorrento was a meek and gentle man, as his own New Yorker article attests. He accommodated his family to self-immolating degrees, and they took advantage of him, ran roughshod over him. My Mighty Meekness, the book, is his cry for help. By documenting their lifelong travesties, Sorrento does not so much as hit back as reaches out, but not to them. No, it's too late for that reconnection. His hand searches for someone to pull him out of their dark milieu and lift him to a safer place. Perhaps the rescuer will be the public, and their salvation for Julian might just come in the form of sales. Time called me a spoil sport, someone so consumed by inadequacies and jealousies that I just couldn't stop myself from undermining the innocent lives of 9 people who never asked to be written about, who had no interest in being in a trashy book, who never desired infamy, who never needed the spotlight shone on them. There should be charges brought against Sorrento for thrusting out onto a national stage of family who are just doing their best they can to get through myriad financial crises and a limited education, which curtails opportunities in this technocratic society. The New Yorker reran excerpts from the original essay and added sections from the book, Their critics said that I did the least with the opportunity they'd given me by publishing the essay. A wiser writer would have moved on to fiction or nonfiction of some social value, maybe a historical book about labor unions or a biography about an obscure artist, but not this self-regarding hack who could only add to the heap of indictments he'd scribbled years earlier about people whose lives ought to have remained anonymous. It's therapeutic spite work disguised as a confessional autobiography, and the family in question are not the only victims of the confessor's vindictiveness and sharp lack of talent. Readers will suffer too. Interview Magazine conducted a vapid interview with me about my childhood roleplay scenarios I briefly referenced in the chapter about my brother James. He and I had assumed the role of a Greek or Egyptian or Roman emperor, and I would have to play his serf, and he would strip naked, and I would have to wash and dry his body with rags. They only focused on the most salacious elements, but not with any psychodynamic depth. I mean, I was 15 or 16 at the time, so their coverage could have been more probing about James's latent, repressed homoerotic tendencies and the pedophilic properties of the encounters. There were also reviews, interviews, and profiles in other publications, like Vanity Fair, a tragedy of the author's own making. Rolling Stone, a spectacle you can't look away from, similar to a cataclysmic car accident. The Paris Review, the product of a culture that rewards TMI and self-victimization. The Gay and Lesbian Review, problematic to the extreme. Sorrento's book poses innumerable challenges gay men will now have to work double time to overcome. The Atlantic, it made me want to call and apologize to my own family, and we have a good relationship. And the Chicago Tribune, a reckoning with a vengeance, however ill-advised. Social media lit up for me too, but not always in the most complimentary ways. Bookstagrammers on Instagram and book talk influencers on TikTok shared their reviews and started a book club to open a dialogue about it and about me to the tune of hundreds of thousands of likes and over 2 million views. Generally, the reviews were mixed. Many critics and readers on Amazon and Goodreads called the book exploitative, a step back for the LGBTQ community, and a desperate grab for fame and money. Though some also said I was courageous and brave and open. I shrugged at all of it, the good and bad alike. Thank you.
That was great, Brian.
Thank you.
You guys can take them off if you want.
Okay. You read so well.
Thank you.
If you ever want to make an audiobook of it, you should do the reading.
I'm a very frustrated actor.
Yeah?
Even at this point.
Well, you showed your skills.
Thank you. Thank you.
So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you hear me? I've got a, excuse myself, I've got a little allergy.
Do you need
my voice
water?
is weird. Yeah. That's good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is so cool. This book is not only thought-provoking, but it is provocative in so many ways that make it really exciting to read and fun to talk about. And we first met like in opposite situation.
That's right.
Brian interviewed me, one of the first people who interviewed me first month after my book came out in
For
22.
Culture Connection.
Yeah,
For Greenland, the summer of 2022.
yeah,
22.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Gosh.
And you're such a great interviewer,
Thank you.
you know, and you've interviewed all these very great writers. So it's kind of like I'm interviewing Charlie Rose here.
Oh, yeah.
Tables have turned. So you read a little bit of the dedication, but you didn't read. But there's, I read Performa non grata, his previous novel, and so I thought when I got this book, had some idea of what I was in for. You know, you have you can be quite provocative and you really go there, and I was like, okay, I know what I'm in for, but I don't think I was quite ready
For this one.
for this one.
Oh, wow.
This one really kicked a punch. So I want to start though with the very, very beginning, and when I say that, I mean with the dedication. You thanked a few people, some of whom were here, and your family members and some people who are passed on. And then you say, what you didn't say when you were reading their names, you said, I am a braver writer because of you.
Yeah, because of Ed and Michael.
Yeah. So how has knowing them, but also writing this book made you a braver writer?
Well, I've always written fiction, and if I did write nonfiction, it was in the form of like book reviews or film reviews or interviews or critical essays. But I always wanted to write a memoir, but I was too afraid to. I just feel like there's a nakedness about writing memoirs that I was shy about. And so I wrote this short memoir, My Mighty Meekness, that Rick Whitaker published in Exquisite Pandemic in 2020. And I thought that maybe I could do it, but when the time came for me to write it, I had a lot of false starts. And so I started talking to people like Edward Louis and Evan White and all these other really great writers who write autofiction.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, autofiction sounds great. I can sort of take people I know and put them into a fictional setting, and then it's about them, but it's not really about them. You know, it's like about my mother, but it's not really about my mother. It's a fictional version of her. It's a fictional version of me.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things in the book, I'm not going to say which things are real about these people and which part are fabrications. That's part of the fun, I think. Allowed me to sort of start to go there in a more daring way. I wouldn't worry so much about what people would think, even if they identify themselves. In fact, I've learned that people are more anxious about being left out than being included. Like everybody wants to be written
Not
about,
so
but
they
nobody
read it.
wants to say it.
Not
You
till
know?
they read it.
Huh?
Not
Not
till they read it.
Thanks. You're scaring me, dude.
Yeah, well, you should be scared. But it was, I thought when I was reading it, wow, this is really brave. Because it is, I mean, sure, I understand that you're playing the line between autofiction and fiction, but there's so much of it, even from me knowing you, that I know is real.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually did write an article called My Mighty Meekness, right? It was the title of it.
Yeah, that was published in 2020.
Right, yeah. So, and that sort of gave you the impetus to say, oh, I could expand this into a novel?
Well, originally it was going to be expanded into a book, an actual memoir.
Oh, an actual
Yeah,
memoir,
and then I think if I'm writing memoiristically, I'm more comfortable in the short form because I don't want to reveal too much. I want to wet the palate but not really give it all away. And if you're writing a whole book, you need to fill the chapters, right? So I found myself stalling just because I didn't want to reveal those things. And the book really is kind of meta on some level because it's about the ethics of memoir writing,
Yeah.
right? It's about the moral implications of writing about other people. And hypocritically, maybe, I write about people that I know. So I mean, I don't think I'm being intentionally hypocritical. I think I was trying to do something meta in the writing of it, right? If I'm sort of indicting memoirists,
Yeah.
I'm going to self-indict as well because it seems fair.
Yeah, and you are fair in that way.
I try to be.
Yeah. So one of the
Oh, and real fast, I wanted to
Yeah,
also
yeah.
point out, Julian is not like a hero. He's an anti-hero. So I don't mean to portray him as some sort of righteous character because he's not. He's an asshole. He really is. What he does is kind of shitty, and he suffers duly for it. He makes a kind of Faustian bargain, right? He gets this incredible success.
absolutely, yeah.
TV show, best-selling books, some fame, as much fame as a writer these days can get, which is not as much as they used to get. So I wanted to show that there are consequences.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's another brave aspect of it is that you, as much as you, and I've learned this too from writing fiction, you can't help but show up in your work.
Yeah.
As much as you disguise it, and it's not real, obviously,
right.
but it's some essential truths come out.
Oh, unconsciously. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you don't even realize it until other people point it out to you, which has happened to me.
Yeah.
But that's another aspect of the book that's really brave, is that you really, the thing you were just talking about, like, you don't make him necessarily a likable character.
And that's my favorite thing to do,
Yeah.
is to write unlikable characters. And I'm a real proponent of it, I really am. I feel like if I have a cause, that's the cause, is to make unlikable characters popular again. You know, Nabokov used to always say it, right? Vladimir Nabokov used to say, I don't care if the character's likable, is he interesting? That's what I care about. And I think I subscribe to
I think
that.
it's like an overemphasis.
Oh, it's
of
out of
these
control.
things. But even with editors and readers, like, oh, I don't like the character, I don't like.
I'm like, is he gonna be your roommate? Like,
Yeah.
are you marrying the person?
Yeah.
Like, why do you need to like this character?
Yeah,
I know, it's my biggest pet peeve. When an agent sends back a book and is like, I'm sorry, I just didn't like the character. I'm like, well, I don't want you to like him.
like, yeah.
He's not likable, actually. He's an interesting character, but he wasn't likable. I'm like, so that's a compliment, thank you.
Yeah, who likes Humbert, right? It's like.
Oh, right, yeah, but he's like a fascinating character.
Exactly. So one of the themes, not only in this book, but especially in this book, but also in your other works, is sort of meekness and masochism, right? And I feel like you are very much a child of Jean Genet,
No, very
in
much
that
so.
tradition.
Very much
You know,
so.
and a lot of writers are influenced by him, including, some of your heroes and mine. Edmund White wrote a biography of Genet and
Yeah,
his
it's
obviously
best book.
influenced. But I think you hold a certain distinction in my mind of like really, what is it? How do you say? Carrying the banner, literary banner.
That is the nicest compliment I've
Oh,
ever
really?
done. Yeah.
I think so, because I don't really know anyone else who so focuses so much on this theme.
Suffering is my favorite topic. It really is, in life and also in art. I think that there's something really profound about it, thematically. I'm working on my doctorate right now, and my dissertation looks at the intersections of masochism, trauma, and resilience with neuroplasticity and moral philosophy as connective tissue.
Wow.
And so I've been like really mired for the past 5 months in martyrdom and accommodating personalities and masochism and suffering and the virtues of suffering. And I think that
Well, that's interesting, the virtues of suffering, right, which is a Genet idea too. It's not completely original, but you really explore that.
yeah, I'm very curious about it. I think also if I'm being completely frank, I think I am a masochist to a certain degree, and people hear masochism, they think sex, and that's not what I'm talking about sometimes. But oftentimes I'm talking about masochism generally. We all suffer for somebody or something. We suffer for our art, we suffer for our partner, our family, and I think that even more than being a masochist, because I'm not sure I always get pleasure from it, I'm probably more, we were talking about distinctions earlier, I'm probably more of an accommodator. I have a very accommodating personality, and I was so much Julian throughout my teenage years, my childhood into my 20s, that I did have a little bit of a nervous breakdown in my late 20s because I took on my whole family.
Right.
And I took on all my friends, and I was like, I'm everybody's social worker now, and it became too much.
But yet you're also talking about taking it on in such a way that itself is some power
Yes.
in taking that on, in that meekness.
For
I
sure.
want to quote you a couple of things you said. One is in the book, there's something, well, this is when Julian also has very strong masochistic tendencies. I don't want to give away too much, but
With Raoul.
well, he gets beat up several times in the book, and he kind of invites it.
Yeah, true.
He did, and he even have a sentence saying that there's something about getting hit that centers a person. That was interesting. And also, I want to read this, I found that my meekness in these moments would eventually provide me a kind of protective barrier, a solace space in which I would move beyond shame and into a Zen-like acceptance of badly behaved people, an acceptance of my own impotence. People will do what they please and make monsters of themselves in doing so, and we must learn how to allow them that.
I'm not a religious person and I'm not a biblical person, but I do subscribe to this idea in the Bible that the meek will inherit the earth. I think there's something very powerful and beautiful about that idea. There's so much aggression and so much bravado and so much egotism and so much rage, and everybody's competing with each other and fighting. and everybody's, trying to outsmart each other all the time. That I think the most beautiful thing is to say, you're all smarter than I am, and I don't really care. You're all better than I am, and I don't really care. Like I'm not in your dogfight. I'm not gonna get into the dirt with you. I'm also not above it. I'm not better than you. I just want no part of it. And I think that there's something really powerful about them. It's almost like Buddhist.
Yeah, well, yeah. The idea of like life is suffering and we must find a way to find joy and acceptance in that.
Yeah, and that's also really empowering because you can't avoid the traumas, you can't avoid the tragedies or the loss, you can't avoid shame. Like all these things are guarantees. So if you embrace them with arms wide open, there's something very calming about that, rather than running away from it or fighting it or resisting it.
Yeah. You mentioned in the bit that you read, you go to these literary parties held by, what's the character's name?
Edward Gray.
Edward Gray and Kevin, who I think I recognize. So, but Ed in the book says, "Do we really need more stories about masochism? Don't we have enough of these?" So you're putting that in there, but you're also doing it. So why? Why do you think we do?
I think why did I do that? Or
Well,
I guess
both.
both. I guess the answer
Yeah.
one is to answer the other. I think there is also, so even though I'm doing it,
Yeah.
right, there is also a lot of it in other permutations. I think that this is gonna probably get me into trouble, but I think that agents and editors and publishers and producers are kind of into victim porn, where they want stories about people who are victimized and who are suffering, and everybody wants to be a victim and everybody wants people to feel bad for them. And that's not really what I'm talking about. And that's not what I want the book to be, or the kind of writer I want to be.
Right.
And for the writers who do this, that's fine. And there's no shame at all. I just don't want to be like, oh, my life is so hard because I'm gay, and
Right.
Read my book because I'm a sad gay man. That doesn't excite me as a writer.
Sad gay man from Queens.
Sad gay man from Queens especially. It's like an extra feather. So yeah, and I think that's what the character was also maybe alluding to. It's like it's tired. And I wanted, I like the idea that Julian is constantly beat up, intellectually, physically, morally, by everybody. His family, the writers, Raoul, himself, the public.
Although I have to say, it was satisfying as a reader. There's a moment, I don't want to give anything, where he actually doesn't allow himself to get beat up.
Yeah, I had to give that little moment
That
of
was I
resistance.
have to admit it was satisfying.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about the style, the format of the novel.
Mhm.
So you blend a variety of genres in this. You have screenplay. Some of it is a treatment of the screenplay. Some of it is the screenplay itself. Some of it is the New Yorker column. Then there's fiction. So how did you? You also you quoted in the book this statement that Borges made, that there's no real in Hebrew there's no real distinction between fiction and nonfiction. It's all just narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I love
Me too.
And actually I saw I don't know if this is where you got it from, but I got it from an interview I saw you conducting with Jay Perini, right?
Yeah, Perini. Yeah.
Yeah, because he was
Borges
writing a book about Borges.
Yeah.
And I use that immediately for myself when I talk about my book too, because it mixes genres.
Yeah.
So there was something here you said about memoirs though that I wanted to. Okay. You talk about memoirs and what you think about memoirs. Not you, Julian talks about memoirs. It says memoirs, there are so few that work, at least for me, but the ones that work for you are the ones that braid journalistic autobiography with rigorous scholarship and theory and have focused central point of view and theme.
Mm-hmm. I think of writers like Susan Sontag or Joan Didion, who were able to write about themselves very personally and revealingly, and then also sociologically, the larger context of their situation. So when Sontag wrote about her breast cancer, she also wrote about like the nature of disease, right? Illness as metaphor, what it means. Or Barbara Ehrenreich, when she wrote about Bright-Sided, she also wrote about her illness and her breast cancer struggles, and also about like positive pop psychology and how destructive that can be. So I'm very turned on by writers who can do the personal and the public at the same time.
Yeah, well, you definitely do that.
Thank you.
How was that process writing for you? Did that happen organically, or did you set out from the beginning knowing that you were going to do this, or did you, as you were writing, did it start to come in? Like, what was the process of coming to that for you?
So I started I was trying to write the book-length memoir, and I'd written like 150 pages.
Oh, wow.
So I had all this material, and then I didn't want to just abandon it.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, what can I do with this? And then a very different story, like a very literally Faustian story, came to me, and I wrote that, and it was kind of hokey. I spent like 6 months writing a whole book, another iteration of this book, that dealt with like the supernatural, and like there was a real Satan in it, and there was a real karma, and all of the writers in the book, except for my character, die hideously, and it was like way over the top and ridiculous. And I gave it to Tom Cardamone and Yannis Pavlos, and they gave me like nice feedback, but they were also like, this is a bit much, and I went away from it for a while, and then I came back to it in a more grounded, realistic way.
How did you, from the feedback you got, it helped you sort of...
From them, yeah, it was really,
reimagine.
thank you, Tom, and thank you, Yannis, if you're watching. Yannis is in Greece. Tom is out and about.
Yeah. So one of the last bits you just read, I was glad you read it because I was going to ask you about it. So you wait at the end, I'll repeat the sentence that Julian says. It's not giving anything away because you already read it. It says, I only sought to tell the truth about a modern American family pressured by the demands of a capitalist society. So the themes of capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, it's a big deal in the book, and it's most overtly with Julian's aunt, right, Mary, and her whole debacle in India,
Northeast
disaster,
India,
and with her husband and the crazy
Raytheon.
thing with her son,
Yeah.
bringing all the homeless people into the house, which Brian, it's fun to read because Brian really does not hold back. He takes this idea and takes it to the max, so it's to the point that it's uncomfortable in a fun way.
That's why I love The Substance so much. If you all see The Substance with Demi Moore, it was so good. I love how that movie went off the rails in the third act. It's my heart. So yeah.
Yeah. So but I'm curious. Like, these themes are huge in the book.
Well, but also by Julian. Don't forget, this is all Julian's voice, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He's a very unreliable, self-serving narrator.
Okay.
So I think that it's his like pretext. Like this isn't. Yeah, sure. I wrote some horrible things about my family, but
It's
it was
under the pretext of this?
Yeah, exactly. It was for a greater cause. I was really trying to investigate and interrogate capitalism.
Well, but the irony is, Brian, is that's what you do in the book.
Yeah, it's very meta.
Yeah, you do attack imperialism and capitalism.
Yes,
and
for sure.
all these
Well,
things.
and very ostensibly with Raoul and what he does to his company.
Right.
Raoul is Julian's ex-boyfriend who becomes an anarchist and takes down the company he works for.
He doesn't X.
Yeah.
You're giving away stuff.
Oh, sorry. I'm giving too much.
But so how do you? These are when you read the book, it's clear that these are important themes as for the writer. How important do you think it is for a writer or an artist, or especially a writer, to grapple and talk about these issues? Is it incumbent upon us to talk about things like racism, homophobia,
I think so. I mean,
unbridled capitalism, and all this?
I think writing should be entertaining at the very least, but why not also tackle subjects in a way that feels really kind of revelatory and honest and open and critical at the same time?
Yeah.
That's what I try to do. But never preachy. I don't like to be preachy.
No.
I like to be I like to be messy,
Yeah.
because it's all a mess.
It's all what?
It's all a mess.
So I once read, or maybe I heard the interview with Sadie Smith, who who I love as a writer, and you interviewed her on the same library, Queens Public Library.
And I interviewed her
Oh,
for
for
Bronx Prep.
Over Bronx,
Democracy
okay.
Prep.
Another.
It was for a
another
school.
borough.
Yeah, another borough. Yeah.
Well, you interviewed.
I interviewed her.
But I read something, or maybe I heard an interview with her saying that she doesn't believe, have you heard this? I mean, you don't know what I'm about to say. She doesn't believe,
Psychic
can you read my
moment.
mind? That writers should write about people to whom they're closely related. And that anytime she's done that, it has backfired, and she does not believe in doing so. And she now avoids it. And what do you
Do you mean like in terms of identity? Or,
Well, like, I mean, like relatives and friends,
Oh, yeah.
close people. She's
so she
close.
avoids it, right?
Yeah, she thinks it's a bad idea to do.
I don't know, this is my first time doing that,
Yeah.
so we'll see how it goes.
Well,
I'm happy with how it turned
you
out.
certainly didn't follow her advice.
No, I didn't.
Well, but I don't think we can actually. Talk about Edmund White. Clearly writes about things that are related. I mean, clearly makes it clear that there's some people who are. It's fiction, but it's from their life. We all pull from our lives. I don't see how you cannot.
Yeah, I don't
Right?
know.
Pull.
I think the more you try to avoid it, the more you end up writing about it on maybe even like a deeper, more thematic level.
Yeah.
And maybe that's, maybe
Well,
people,
maybe that's.
and I think that's why I wrote fiction, and especially graphic, disturbing fiction, was because I was able to write about things that were often shameful
Yeah.
and under an incredible disguise. Because when it's fiction, it's not about you, right? It's a story. These are characters you're making up.
Okay. So I'm going to hit you with something here.
Uh-oh.
You did this to yourself.
Uh-oh.
You wrote this book, and there are some pretty clear lines you can draw from people who I know who they are,
I'm not going to say who they're.
right? But it's clear from reading it, to a lot of people it will be. Did you have conversations with people before you wrote this book, family members or famous writers who you include in this book? Did you have
I was talking to my friend
conversations
Laura
with
about
them before this, or are you ready for the conversations that you're about to have?
this. I think it's better to beg forgiveness than ask permission.
Oh,
I'm of that school.
That's Sontag, right?
Was that Sontag?
Yeah, right.
Uh-oh.
so no.
So no.
I'd like to ask a question that's related.
Yeah.
Okay, I know you have a question.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I think sometimes you get an idea that the author as well as the main character who's narrating are in some ways the same, in some ways not. But the main thing, the ride for the reader is how good is the first sentence? That's a very, very important thing. And because that creates confidence
Yep.
in the reader, and that courage that is almost like a swagger. Your chain sentences,
Mm-hmm.
very amazing. Just they go on and funnier and funnier. And I was wondering how you were able to keep the tone, because really it needs to be every line. Keep the tone and not give in to your message.
It was because of you. You were interviewed by Interview Magazine
Good
a couple of
question.
years ago, Michael, and you said that you used to agonize over constructing sentences and
Yeah.
make them as eloquent and artful as possible. And then one day you said, screw it. And you just started writing the way you would speak
Yeah.
in a very free and fluid way. And that's the advice I took. And that's how I wrote this book.
I think first lines always get you in, and one of my favorites, one that really changed my writing, was the first line of The Easter Parade by Richard
Yeah,
Yates,
that's so good.
which is, neither of the Grimes sisters will have a happy life.
It's such a good
Right,
So-
you're in right there, you're in.
It's one of the best first sentences ever. Yeah.
Well, it's true what you're saying, Michael, and it's also, I was thinking about that as I was listening to you read it, because it's engaging right away, and and the tone, but it's in your voice, hearing it in your voice is actually different than reading it. It's even better.
Oh,
Hearing it in your voice, because, and now when I look back at the book, I can hear your voice, so it'll be even, but you to keep the tone consistent, and it's engaging,
Thank you.
and it is, like someone's talking to you,
Yes.
which is much more engaging than like someone writing a nice sentence for you, you know? That's a little more, that's distancing.
It's the
really,
first
you know,
time I've written that way. It's taken me a really long time to feel confident enough to write that way.
But the voice of the psychologist or the social worker makes it.
It helps, because my background is in psychology
Yeah.
and social work, yeah.
So how do you, so I know, you know, we're friends, I know your life is crazy. When I say crazy, I mean in a good way. Brian does more things in a day than I do in a year. Listen, I don't think I'm joking. Right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm not the only one who thinks that. And not only that, you're working on screenplays, graphic novels, multiple film and book reviews. You're, dealing with your home life and your pets and your work. And like, how do you do it? What's your writing life like, and how do you manage your time to do all
My
this?
husband is making a face in the background. 'Cause he's like, does he really do it? He does it, but does he do it well?
Is this
Okay.
does Tom want to give
He's
me
like,
that?
eh.
Maybe Tom can answer this.
That was a question for a red book.
How do you do it? I'm very anal. Like, I'm very OCD about structure.
Yeah.
Like, I think because of college and graduate
Well, you
school.
can just say discipline.
I'm very disciplined. I think because of college, of course I have to go to anal. We're surrounded by wonderful sex and beautiful naked men. Because of college and graduate school, I think I have a permanent, embedded schedule structure in my brain, where it's like I wake up at 8, from 8 to 9 I'm reading, from 9 to 5 I'm working, I work from home, but I'm able to steal like 2 hours throughout the course of my workday because I'm very efficient. I get all the work done. Very efficient, get everything done, all my deliverables are always on time. But I'm also able to find time for myself through the course of the day to work on my dissertation for an hour, to do the laundry for an hour, to create this book cover or whatever it is for an hour. And then, I don't know. And I'm always working. Tommy can tell you, my husband can tell you. Even when we're sitting down to watch a movie or TV show, I'm doing something. I think I have nervous hands.
I've got to ask Tommy how that is for him. But I'm impressed. I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
Yeah. But it's also, I don't know, I'm sure there are some, other writers out there who are listening and people who are even aspiring writers. And it's, wanting to know like how, it's always interesting to me how other people organize their life so that you can actually do the work because, writing is a verb. They say you have to write, you have to do it.
You have to make time. It's like really basic. It's
Right.
You have to be like downright and absolute about carving out an hour or 2 hours a day and being faithful to that hour or 2 hours a day, and just doing something, even if it's just rereading what you've already written and making it better.
Yeah.
You have to be like, it has to be sacred. You have to be very strict about it. Do a little bit at a time, even if it takes years and years to write. This took me 2 years to write. So,
Yeah. Well, 2 years, that's not long for, some people are super fast, but,
Donna Tartt took like 10 years writing The Goldfinch.
oh yeah, plenty of friends who've taken 8, 9 years.
Yeah, Mary Gateskill took 8 years with Veronica.
Yeah, it takes a long time to write a novel. Sometimes, depending, most of the time.
And Jack Kerouac wrote On the Road in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
He was also doped up, right? Benzos.
Is that what it was? So, how much time do we have? Do we have time for more questions? Or
I'm not sure. How are we doing with time? Does anybody know what time it is?
8:30.
Okay. So you have a character in the book by the name, a very familiar name, Dr. Brian Alessandro.
Yeah, I did this weird thing. My
Okay.
editor was like, "Do you want to do this? This is so weird because the character's like a weird pervert." And I was like, "Yeah, of course I'm going to do that."
Well, he's a weird pervert, but he also espouses some ideas, some important ideas. There's a great dialogue with him and Pegasus, and also with Mary and Monroe too. So tell me about the decision to that, because it made me as a reader wonder, are these are Brian letting us know that these are his beliefs here? I mean, not the, what did you call him?
Which,
Pervert?
the weird pervert?
Not the word pervert part, but the other.
Yeah, the part that he kind of comes in, he stays with, he's Pegasus is the character of Mary Ann Monroe, who goes to Columbia, and he's a professor of sociology there. And he's the one who encourages Pegasus to invite the homeless people, the unhoused people. Julian calls them homeless. I know the politically correct term is unhoused, but Julian's not politically correct. To invite them into their home to live, to teach his parents a lesson. Because the mother did this disruptive thing in India, and the father builds bombs for Raytheon, so they need a lesson, right? So he then moves in himself into the house, and so they're all squatting in the parents' house, and he ends up having an affair with Pegasus and Pegasus's boyfriend, who's also unhoused, and he starts to challenge them with sort of their politics.
Yeah,
and
yeah. So
think,
how did you decide to put your name in there and keep that there? What's?
I'm
No, you
sure
don't
like
want
some of my, I feel like, who was it? Gary Steingart does that, and I was always impressed with his audacity. So I just thought it'd be
I
fun.
think Paul Auster did it
Paul
too,
Auster,
right?
yeah, Paul Auster does it.
Yeah.
Henry Miller did it.
Henry Miller did it. Yeah, a lot of writers did it, and I just thought it was a fun device. And I like the idea of poking fun at myself too.
Yeah.
And just the strangeness of it. And also, I was thinking about going back for my doctorate for a few years.
Oh, yeah.
And while I was writing this book, it was very much on my mind. So I was sort of envisioning myself as already being a doctor. And that helped me then finally pull the trigger and apply and get into this amazing program that I'm in. So it was a bit of a, what do you call that? Like speaking your future
Yeah,
into
yeah.
reality.
Manifesting, or whatever
your
you call it,
destiny,
your
yeah.
writing future.
Yeah.
So one of the great things about this book too is that you go high, you go low. You go, at some points it's extremely intellectual, and you're dealing with some complex questions and ideas, and then you're like in the mud fighting on the side of the street and or having some fun sex with So it's great. The whole gamut is there.
That's another one of my favorite things to do is to mix highbrow and lowbrow.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
So, okay, so you have one thing I was curious about this idea. You say anthropology is the new colonialism, right? And so you say watching the behavior of the thing changes the behavior of the thing.
Yeah.
So tell me about this idea. Because I think it's
Well, that
interesting.
has to do with Mary, who's the anthropologist
Yeah.
who works at Columbia, who goes to northeastern India, and she's observing a tribe in that region, and she, I think it's Mike, the Brian character, who challenges her on this and saying, you think what you're doing is you're not invisible. Your subjects can see you, they can smell you, they can hear you, they have a sense of what you're doing. But I'm reading Janet Malcolm right now, The Murderer and the Journalist, and it's all about journalistic ethics and how, in my mind, psychologists, anthropologists, and journalists all have this thing in common where they have a subject that they're working with or working on or studying, and you, as a living thing, whether you're a mouse or a cockroach or a human, you're going to be aware that you're being looked at and studied and scrutinized. And you're not going to give your most authentic behavior, which is why it's magical to me when actors on the stage can forget the audience and just be in the moment and act in a way. They have to trick themselves into believing that they're not being watched in that moment by 100 people. That's amazing that they can do that. That's an incredible gift. I'm always too conscious of people, even when I'm just with one person. I'm hyper conscious of your breathing, of your gaze, of if you're looking at your phone, what does that mean? Am I boring you? All these things I worry about.
Having once been an actor, trained as an actor,
Right.
It's actually, but it's kind of similar because you can't really forget that the audience is there. You do hear the rustling of the paper and the people,
Coughing,
the coffee.
yeah.
You have to be aware. You have to hit your mark so you're in the light. So it's not that you're get lost in the character. It's like this double consciousness where part of you is completely there in the moment, but part of being in that moment is also awareness.
Right. And if you're
of
Patty
everything,
LaPone, you yell at somebody. Are you kidding me? Remember that? Patty LaPone.
Yeah, oh yeah. And I once saw Katharine Hepburn do it.
Oh, that's amazing.
She stopped
On stage,
the show,
that's amazing.
stopped the show and had
That's
the
so
person,
cool.
yeah, she get that man out of the theater.
That's so cool. That's amazing.
Yeah. One last thing I want to throw at you. These are just, I mean, I could talk to you about so many things. There's so many things in this book, you guys. I could ask questions for days because you have so much packed in there.
You can call me over the weekend. We can talk.
Okay, tell me, do you believe this, or is this something Julian says, or what do you think about it? Why do you have this statement in there? Spite is not petty, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, well, I think a part of me believes that, but Julian obviously does, because this is an act of vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, his memoir is an act of vengeance against his family. So, I was just on Subway Takes the other day, and I spoke about how vendetta is an Italian thing, and if you
Right.
have a vendetta and you're not Italian, it's cultural appropriation. But it made me think of that. So he happens to be Italian American, and he does have a vendetta, and he does go after his family, and he does try to hurt them. I think I told you once, we were talking about Michelle Obama, and how she said when they go low, we go high, and I say, well, when they go low, I go lower. Because it feels human, like it feels human and honest to want to hit someone back. I get it. Even though I was talking a little while ago.
Yeah, I bet she
about
takes
how-
that back now.
I know, I've ruined it for her. I
What
know.
about questions from the audience? Do we have any?
Questions? You could always,
Michael had a great question.
yeah, thank you for that.
Well, I just want to say one thing, just appropriate to what you just said. You have a line in here about the writer always gets the last word,
Oh, yeah.
which I really, really enjoy.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's true that I think that, don't ever get into a fight with a writer, because they'll get the last word, unless you're a writer too. And then you just keep going back and forth in public, right? And somebody has to stop eventually. Oh boy,
Maybe
it's...
the sequel would be one of your relatives writing.
Oh, that's not a bad idea. Maybe one of the, I like it. We'll collaborate.
Is there a question that you secretly wished I would have asked you and I didn't?
Good.
Oh, man. No, you're so thorough. You're so thorough. I don't even know what to... Yeah, you're so thorough. I don't even know, really what to...
Well, is there anything that you want to say about the book that hasn't been said?
No.
This is your day, baby. This is your
No, I don't think so. I think I wrote an essay for the Gay and Lesbian Review, and I think they're publishing it in another week or two, which goes into the writing of the book and also the nature of memoir writing and kind of everything that I wanted to say got put into that essay. So look out for it. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for watching.
And Brian will be signing books up here at the front of the room. The books are for sale at the register. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.